Somebody help me! I need a flight effect! Welcome back to our Superman flight effect miniseries. Yes, we are actually covering this effect in a 4-part miniseries. The first 2 are out right now. The first of which covered DIY lighting methods and using household equipment in order to make our Superman rig. In the second, Javert covered keying out our actor and creating the 3D environment of which we're flying through. And today we're going faster than a speeding bullet and breaking the sound barrier by creating a sonic boom. We're going to be using HitFilm Express in this tutorial, but you can follow along in Pro, or if you have the 3D Particles add-on. This is one of my favourite tools to use, so let's start. To keep things simple and organised later in the tutorial, create a point to be the controller and source of our flight path. And as the particle simulator works in 3D space, our controller should match that, so let's make it 3D. Go into the Particles and Simulation dropdown and bring Particle Simulator into the timeline. Before we forget, parent this layer to the controller point. To get a good base going, let's first begin with the flight trail. Open up the emitters tab and let's rename this flight trail. We're going to be making 3 emitters for this effect, and this is going to be the easy round. First, go ahead a few frames in the timeline to see our particles in animation. At the moment it's a little sporadic, and for the trail we're going to need all our particles to be in a line. We can keep the shape as a point, but we'll change trajectory to target. It might seem like it's disappeared, but if we go down and add a force, we'll now have a straight line of particles. I'm going to increase my force strength to around 50 as well. Right, let's change these particles up and add some chaos in there. Go into the movement dropdown and decrease the life to about 0.5 and the scale down to 15, as these don't need to be too big. Depending on how fast you want your flight to be, increase or decrease the speed value. I've gone for 500. To make it less uniform, we should add some variation to our life, scale, and speed values. There we go. This is cool, but do you know what else is cool? Aerodynamics. Let's add some brakes in the wind. Our trail makes a great base, so we can copy the emitter's settings by duplicating it. Be sure to rename the new one to avoid any confusion. This time around, we're wanting more of a curved spread, so change the shape to circle and trajectory to disc. Unlike the trail, we're wanting this one to be a little and often, so up the particles per second to 6,000. As for our variations, let's up the speed to 500, and as they're still quite large, I'll completely remove the scale variation. The last particle system is for our sonic boom and will require being separated from the other emitters. So bring one in from the effects dropdown. Don't forget to also parent this one to the point layer. Let's get into these settings. We can keep the shape as a point, but let's change trajectory to disc. This will nicely fit with our sonic boom. Now as we need the boom to be a lot thicker, I'm going to need a bunch of particles. So I'm going to amp up the particles per second to 80,000. We don't need them to stick around for too long, so dial the life to about 0.2, and the scale to 8. As we're after a large impact area, increase the speed until the particles appear to be wider than the other emitter. Now we can throw in some variation again. And while we're at it, add a force. I'll increase the strength of this to about 100 to be twice as powerful as the other emitters. For the boom, we're going to be animating the strength of our force, the speed of our emitter, and the actual particle activation. Let's set keyframes for them all. If you're unsure where activation is located, it's under General in the top of the effect. Press U to reveal all our keyframes on the timeline. What we're after is a wide spread followed by a coning. With our keyframes set as they are, this is the height of our animation. So let's add some keyframes for the start, going back a few frames and changing the value to a lower number. I'll also move the keyframe for the activation to this point. Let's set a disable one frame before it and another at the end of the sequence. For the first couple of frames, I kept my force strength to around 40 just to let it build up. It'll take some time experimenting, but what we're after is something like this. As wind and sonic boom don't look like particles, let's add some effects, starting off with the trail. To soften our edges, we'll be using a series of blurs, starting off with the blur effect, which I brought down to around 8. And as we have a need for speed, let's also use a zoom blur. I'll make it quite strong, but parent this to our controller. Then it'll be a case of offsetting or animating the direction. Last blur is a diffuse set to the heavy preset. Let's copy these effects and apply them to our sonic boom. The only thing we're going to be doing differently here is decrease the strength of the zoom blur, add a small heat distortion effect above all the blurs just to make it a little less clean, and finally a color gradient to help match the tones with my background, which was created by using the methods in Javert's previous tutorial. Check that out if you haven't already, as it has some amazing tips. But to briefly summarize, it's a 3D set made of images, some real camera data, then the key of my hero was brought in, attached to my controller point, and as everything works in 3D, I can animate this point throughout my scene. You know, I never actually wore a cape during the filming of this sequence. That is completely CG and designed just to help sell the speed of which we're flying at. Want to know how we made it? Be sure to subscribe, hit the bell icon, like this video, and check out our next tutorial. You've reached the end of this video, and no, this isn't Nick Fury recruiting Superman for the Avengers. This is us thanking the real heroes. You. Since January of this year, our amazing community has raised over $100,000 for multiple charities, including WWF and Make-A-Wish. This is going to make such a difference to so many lives, and it's all down to you. The next charity that we're supporting is WaterAid, bringing clean water and good hygiene to vulnerable communities during COVID-19. If you're downloading HitFilm Express, help us raise more and get involved by following the link in the description. And once again, from all of us and everyone out there, thank you.